Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about how our country was made after the Revolutionary War. So, after the Revolutionary War, the men started coming together to try to figure out how they can run this country a little more smoothly than what they came in from in Great Britain with King George. So, they decided to write a set of laws or rules called the Articles of Confederation, which explained how the country is going to be run. But it wasn't as great as they thought it was going to be. It's not like the current Constitution that we have for our country. The Articles of Confederation happened to be the first Constitution to our country, but they soon realized, as I mentioned before, that it was not as great as they thought it was going to be. So let's watch a quick video that helps explain why it wasn't as great as they originally had planned on it.
In the U.S., we love our Constitution. But it wasn't always this way. Before the Constitution and government we have today, we had a sort of prototype constitution called the Articles of Confederation, which created a nation of independent states only loosely linked together by a single Congress. The Founding Fathers intentionally designed a nation with a very weak central government. There was no judicial branch, no executive branch, so there's no president. Which, when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. You know, the colonists had just been through a really bad breakup with the British king, and they're not about to get back together with a government who looked just like their ex, okay? We've all made that mistake before, okay? You go and date a girl like the last girl you dated, you're gonna get hurt, okay? Don't do this to yourself. The Congress, which was just a single chamber with a delegate from every state, did have some power, like the authority to make treaties and alliances, maintain an army, and coin money. But they couldn't levy the taxes to pay for those things. In fact, under the Articles of Confederation, paying federal taxes was voluntary for the states, who of course were like, no thanks, we're good. The U.S. had borrowed money from European investors and nations to pay for the Revolutionary War, but with no power to tax, the United States couldn't pay back any of those debts, creating a huge economic disaster by 1787. With no funds and limited power, the central government couldn't do much to protect peace at home. This became abundantly clear during Shays' Rebellion in 1786, when farmers in Massachusetts violently protested against the state's high taxes. So if the Articles of Confederation weren't working, why didn't they just make changes to it? Well, it was practically impossible. Amendments to the Articles needed unanimous consent, and the delegates from the 13 states had more opinions than a YouTube comment section. By the way, you should comment on this video right now. Say something nice about it. This weak Congress and a broke, ineffective federal government eventually proved to be too much of a burden on the United States. Because when 13 different state governments held all the power, nothing was getting accomplished. The Founding Fathers found this out the hard way. So they went back to the drawing board, drafting a new and improved Constitution, which is still the law of our land today.
All right, so that kind of explained where the Articles of Confederation came from and why we no longer have them and we have the Constitution. So, thinking about
In the U.S., we love.
Thinking about that video and thinking
In the
about
U.S.,
the
we
information
love.
that is involved in it, let's take a look at this picture. It says, you may think this was a photo showing an American Revolution battle or major event. However, this is actually a photo of an uprising or protest led by angry citizens that broke out just a few years after America became a new independent nation. Why do you think these citizens are so angry at the new nation? Well, it had a lot to do with how it was being run and how the articles were written. Today, we're going to learn about the many challenges that America faced and the path that led to the new laws and type of government we still have today. So let's take a look at this passage. New nation, weak start. After the war in 1783, the British surrendered at Yorktown, which we talked about at the end of the Revolutionary War, and the Treaty of Paris officially marked the end of the American Revolution. America was free from Great Britain and became its own independent nation. A new nation needed new laws, so representatives had worked together to create a new national government. This new government established or created a new set of laws called the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation created a weak national government. I repeat, a weak national government. This meant that the U.S. government did not have much power to force states to do anything. For example, the national government could not tax the states. Wow. This meant that the U.S. could not afford to create an army to protect its people or its borders. So, number one, we can't tax. Number two, we can't have an army, which is horrible. On the other hand, states had more power and often ignored the laws that the national government created. The U.S. was quickly facing serious economic problems. Remember, economic means money, and even had uprisings due to the weaknesses of the articles. Yikes, this is not sounding good. So thinking about what we just read, we already can tell that the articles is not a good thing. They don't have control over the government. The people in the states are having way too much control. And it's important for a government to have control because then everybody has fair laws. And right now, under the Articles of Confederation, nothing is fair and there's no control. So let's find out what happens. Why was the first U.S. government so weak? Well, many Americans were fearful that the national government would have too much power. They had just gained their independence from a tyrannous leader and did not want a powerful national government. Understandable, right? Each state created their own form of currency, or money, and their own set of laws. Many Americans favored the ideas of states having more power. Though the new nation was known as the United States, there was nothing united about the states. Moving forward, leaders knew they had to do something to change or revise the Articles of Confederation. So in 1787, delegates from each of the 12 states sent representatives to Philadelphia. It was at this meeting, later known as the Constitutional Convention, that leaders created a plan to remove the weak Articles of Confederation and replace it with a stronger set of laws. So let's think about what we just read. Number one, it says up here that each state had their own form of currency or money. Can you imagine traveling from Georgia to another state, let's say Texas, and not being able to use the money you just had in Georgia? Now you've got to figure out how to use Texas's money. That's what they were going through. They had their own set of laws. So you could not drive a car in Texas, but you could in Georgia. Those are just examples. But think about how not having a good national government would create such a horrible country, and how it was just starting to crumble already from these Articles of Confederation because they were so weak. All right. So, from our reading, we learned that Americans were fearful of having a strong national government. It's totally understandable. They just came from King George. They don't want to go through that again. Instead, Americans wanted individual states to hold the most power, which sounds good at first, but it could be very dangerous. They did not want a repeat of what they had just suffered with King George the tyrant. The Articles of Confederation was America's first set of laws, but all of that is about to change because they're about to try to get rid of it and revise it. So, thinking about what we just learned today and how the national government was first weak because the Articles of Confederation were weak. Why would we want to change that? Do we want a stronger national government? Do we really want the states to have more power than the national government? Well, you're going to think about that in your task today. There are a list of weaknesses that were described in the Articles of Confederation on all of these slides. What you're going to do is you're going to go through each one and you're going to list and describe why they are weak or why that would be a challenge. For instance, the first one says no leader or president to control the government. why would not having a leader or a president be a challenge or a weakness for our government? It might be pretty obvious to some of you, but think about it. If we did not have a leader or a president to help us with our country, why would that be bad? So you're going to do that for each of these different situations and think about them in complete sentences, okay? Write out your thoughts in complete sentences and think about all of these situations about how the colonists felt by forming this new country and having these weak articles of confederation and how they were going to possibly change them. All right, guys, that's it for social studies. Enjoy your task, and I will see you tomorrow.